Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Money After Military. This is Train As You Fight, job interview preparation presented by Candorful. My name is Jack Martin. I'm a program assistant with the Office of Economic Empowerment and the Veterans Bonus Division. This event will provide veterans with best practices to prepare for and succeed at job interviews. We will hear from Pat Hubble with an introduction to Candorful and best practices for interview preparation, followed by a mock interview section with audience volunteers and Candorful coaches. We're also live streaming this Zoom webinar on our Facebook accounts at Economic Empowerment MA and at Veterans Bonus. So we'll do a quick housekeeping followed by an OEE and Veterans Bonus intro with information about Operation Moneywise. Then we'll get into Candorful's presentation, followed by the interview practice session. This is a Zoom webinar and will be recorded. The recording may be uploaded onto a public website for future use. Any information shared through the Q&A function will be anonymous. Please note, however, that the chat record is subject to public record laws and as such is not anonymous. This is a Zoom webinar and not a meeting, so viewers will not be able to see other participants. However, you can ask questions via the chat function or the Q&A feature. And we kindly ask you to fill out a short exit survey after this webinar to help us improve our future events. And this will pop up automatically on your screen. It should only take about 1 to 2 minutes. The Office of Economic Empowerment is a department within the Office of the Treasurer and Receiver General of Massachusetts, tasked with supporting, advocating, and facilitating policies that empower all Massachusetts residents. Our programs serve women, families, high school students, veterans, and seniors. Our priorities include financial education, closing the race and gender wage gap, racial equity, college affordability, and promoting STEM education. The Veterans Bonus Division is a department within the Office of the Treasurer and Receiver General of Massachusetts that provides payments to veterans for service in the United States military. Through our program, we serve veterans of the Commonwealth and their families by providing financial assistance when eligible. The Veterans Bonus Division distributes bonuses for eligible active duty, discharged, and deceased Massachusetts veterans who served during various conflicts in single or multiple deployments. For a complete list of our bonuses, you can visit our website, and this information will be included in the chat below. Applications for this year's Operation Moneywise are now being accepted. This grant opportunity is designed to help veterans serving nonprofit organizations, public agencies, and higher education institutions improve their pre-existing financial education programs or to create new ones aimed at increasing personal finance knowledge within the military, veteran, family, and survivor community. The application deadline is Thursday, April 7th. Organizations can apply here and submit any questions to Operation Moneywise at tre.state.ma.us. And again, this information will be shared in the chat. So that will do it for me, and I'm going to pass it on to Pat Hubble.
Thanks, Jack, so much for that introduction. It's really an honor to be working with you all today, and just actually trying to share my deck, and bear with me a minute. I apologize, that was not what I meant to share. Got that nicely recorded. Being tight. So one thing I want to say as I'm working to get my computer to be able to share the deck is that there will be the opportunity to ask questions like Jack mentioned. Make sure you use the chat for that purpose, because there may be things that I say very quickly that don't necessarily resonate with you, right? So throw a question out there. We'll do our best. I'll do my best to keep an eye on it and give you a chance to actually put your 2 cents in and put your thoughts out there as well. So first of all, I wanted to thank you, Jack, and the Office of Economic Empowerment for inviting Candorful and agreeing to do this presentation. Candorful's focus is on interview preparation for veterans transitioning military and military spouses. We work hard to provide practice interviews. We have a team of over 100 volunteer interview coaches. They're all from industry. They all do interviews as part of their day job. So when they do practice interviews with our Candorful military job candidates, they're bringing forth the experience of a real interview. So I encourage anybody who is listening, and whether they're transitioning military now, or they're a veteran or a military spouse, look up candorful.org and actually practice with us. I'm very proud of the presentation we're about ready to do, but keep in mind, there's nothing better than actually being in the hot seat and thinking through the emotions and the concerns you've got as you actually participate in an interview. So coming to practice through Candorful is even more powerful than listening to a webinar about it. Both together are going to make you unstoppable. I also want to thank Amazon for actually providing support for this workshop. Nonprofit or not, we need funds to keep us rolling so that we can keep this free for veterans. And what Amazon has been awesome for doing that. I also want to thank Cummings Foundation, who provides us with a grant for doing this work. And with that, let's jump right in. So we're going to talk very briefly about Candorful and our mission. So our goal is to connect transitioning military, veterans, and military spouses with experienced interviewers so you can have personal practice, job interviews, and feedback so they can nail that interview. And next on our agenda is to talk about the job interview mindset. You know, when you walk into an interview, I think when I do, I'm feeling nerves mostly. I'm wondering what's going to happen. I'm taking in the environment around me. I'm thinking about the person I'm about ready to meet. But there are other ways to think about this. There are other things to kind of think through. And I wanted to kind of give you that perspective, right? So when you are someone interviewing someone for a job, you are really asking yourself, who will add the most value to my organization? So think about that. If I have to fill a position, I'm not really just thinking about, do I like this person? I am thinking about that. But I'm not just thinking about that likability. I'm also thinking about, will this person actually add value and provide benefit to the organization? And that's an important distinction. So you got to think about how you would fit as a puzzle piece into the organization. So when you go into the interview, the question on your mind is, how am I demonstrating that I am the best person for this job? How am I showing my value? How am I showing that I fit? How am I expressing myself? Now, there are things you can do, like you can have read the job description that gives you some insight into what the job is and what their hot buttons are. But even better, hopefully you've done some informational interviewing. That's kind of more like informational conversations with people from that organization, perhaps even the hiring manager, perhaps even potential future colleagues. And these people have inside scoop on problems that have happened in the past, things that that organization likes, culture of that organization. This can help you understand the value that you need to portray. And so real quick, I'm going to do a real quick commercial on a book I like called The 2-Hour Job Search. If you are unfamiliar with the terms I just used about informational interviewing and how to actually do this and what it is, please get this book. It's written by Steve Dalton of Duke's Fuqua School of Business. My book is very beat up and tabbed up, and that's what yours should look like after you read it. It's a great book about how to do networking and informational interviewing. And this informational interviewing will tell you how to express your value and how to understand the needs of the organization. All right, so let's kind of break things up here. Let's look at the old mindset, kind of the military mindset you might have had when you were in the military or from the military culture you're involved in, and compare that to the new mindset you need to shift to. So let's start thinking about when you talk about yourself. This may feel arrogant, right? I did this. I brought this to the table. I benefited. That may seem arrogant in the military mindset. The reality is, the new way to think about this is you need to be able to talk about what you did in terms of what you did, not what your team did, so you can convey the value you brought to the project, to the program, to the product, because you're sharing data. So without data, the hiring manager, the hiring team can't hire you. They need to know what you brought to the table, not just what your team. Now, it doesn't have to be you taking advantage of what the team did. You need to express what the team did and what you did. So it's kind of a combo of the two. Roughly maybe 75% I, 25% team. The idea is as a hiring person, I need to know what you brought to the table and how you accomplished it. So again, it's data, it's not arrogance. So success is about the value the team delivers. Again, that's true. I think we want to hire people that work well with a team. This is essential. But at the same time, the hiring manager is not hiring the team. And if they are unclear where you begin and the team ends, they're going to have trouble justifying hiring you. So you need to talk about what you brought to the table and how you made the team successful and how you made the project successful. So what I deliver. Companies will or won't hire you because I am a veteran. So I hear veterans say it both ways. Oh, I'm not going to get hired because I'm a veteran. People are biased. I will get hired because I'm a veteran. That's actually neither of those things will get you hired or not hired. What really will get you hired is if you can convey how that you as a veteran have incredible abilities and can convey what those are and translate why that makes you valuable to the organization. That's what will get you hired. I know from listening and talking to over 2,000 veterans over the past few years that you guys have amazing men and women. I mean, by guys, you have amazing experience and under perhaps really particularly interesting and creative situations. You need to be able to talk about that and talk about that value to be able to convey to a hiring manager why you're valuable. Interviewing is something you can simply wing. So this is definitely a mindset that is not correct. It requires a lot of practice and a lot of skill building. And there are multiple ways to build the skills. A lot of people build them simply by actually going through interviewing and learning the hard way. And that is a very common way to do it. It's very demotivating unless you land the job on your first set of interviews or second set of interviews, which should be very, very rare. So the best thing to do is to practice with a transition organization like 4Block or Hiring Our Heroes, practice with Candorful, because we believe that it's really not an event, it is a journey. And that all the rehearsal you get and all the feedback you get will help inform you on what's good, what's bad, and give you the confidence to be really good at interviewing and doing well. And I didn't mean to go forward quite so quick, but you take down those thoughts. The idea is share what you can about your experience, share it with confidence. It is not arrogance. Make sure you're sharing the value you bring, which means understanding also the job and the job description that you're headed for. All right. So now we'll talk briefly about telling your story. So the first part of an interview is typically the elevator pitch. So, I'm going to ask for some people to get ready in the chat. I would love to have people write a quick comment about what they think an elevator pitch is, or what the value of an elevator pitch is, or why you do an elevator pitch. Is anybody feeling like they want to throw out some ideas? Waiting for the chat. Give you 5 more seconds. There's got to be someone out there that wants to give an idea and not just hear me talk. All right, we got a couple of brave people. All right, Jason is saying an elevator pitch is what you do and who you do it for. Okay, that's certainly valuable information. Fred is saying it's small talk, and Justin is saying an elevator pitch is a 5-second summary of your thing. And Desiree, quick introduction about yourself. So I think in general, almost everybody's got it to some degree. I will say the strongest answer here is a quick introduction about yourself. Thank you, Desiree. An elevator pitch is talking about your thing. It needs to be more than 5 seconds. 5 seconds is really fast. And what you do and who you do it for or who you did it for is really valuable information as well. So I would say, in a nutshell, my words are, think of it as simply introducing yourself, right? So my name is Pat Hubble. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Candorful. These are a few of my past experiences, and I look forward to telling you more about myself throughout the interview. Could be something as simple as that. That might have been a little short, but the idea is to give an introduction. So how do you know what to say in an introduction? Is it small talk? Is it more detailed? Is it 5 minutes long? Is it 5 seconds long? So this is what I'd like you to go back to, that slide I showed you in the beginning. Who will add the most value to my organization? So when I'm giving my elevator pitch, this is where I want to start showing the value I bring. It means I need to think about how my puzzle piece fits into the puzzle of the organization, right? So I always think about it this way. What experiences from my past illustrate fit and value to this organization? What experiences from my past illustrate fit and value to the organization? And you should be using this thought throughout the elevator pitch and even in your behavioral interview questions, which we'll talk about next. But think about perhaps a chronological tour of your experience, and where you're going to bring up 2 or 3 things from your past that directly relate to where you're going in this role. Also, what experiences from your past you're particularly passionate about. Now, there could be something that's not really related to the direction you're going in this job interview, but it's something that would tell a lot about you. Like perhaps you volunteer, perhaps you're a Candorful coach and you volunteer for Candorful so that you can impact the lives of military. That might be something really valuable to bring up. Perhaps it's some outside activity or some project you did at work, because that'll show 3-dimensionality about you. So mostly it's about what you've done in the past that's related to the future, but also what interesting things from your past have you done as well. So your experiences and your interests are the data you need to present to a hiring manager, to the hiring team, so that you show fit and value. This is where I love to say, does this make sense for in a meeting? But you guys can't respond, fingers crossed. And I would love to see a couple of thumbs up come through chat or thumbs down and a couple of questions feel free to ask. While I wait for that, I'm going to move along. So the next part of the interview is about the behavioral question aspect of it. So this is where kind of the real deeper conversation goes. This is where coaches might ask what we call behavioral interview questions. I'm going to check the chat. Maybe we've got at least a thumbs up from Justin. Thank you. So when you're answering questions from the for the behavioral part, they can come to you as questions from your resume, questions about your progress through your career, but they can be very transactional. Tell me about a time you failed. What is your greatest weakness? Tell me about a time you had to be creative without many resources. And there's thousands of these questions. This is where you use the STAR, the SOAR, or the PAR methodology to stay on track. Those are all basically the same thing. So don't get like, oh my God, what is she saying? What is STAR, SOAR, and PAR? I'm going to teach you STAR. It's probably the most common version, but they're all the same thing. STAR stands for situation, task, action, result. SOAR is situation, objective, action, result. PAR is problem, action, result. And the way to think about it is when you're answering a question, let's say somebody said, tell me about a time you failed. How do I know how far to go? What happens if I, do I end up going off in left field and come back? What is it they really want to hear? This is what they want to hear. They want to understand the situation that you were in and the task or problem ahead of you. Okay. They want a clear understanding of where you started with this situation. Then they want to hear the action you took. What did you do? Saying, what did I do? Right? I did this. I did that. The team did this. The team was involved with this. My role was, right? They want to know the action you took. And then they want to know the results that you got. Okay. So let's take a walk through that little diagram at the bottom. Each of the lines represents a length of time. Now, how long should this be overall? It depends. It could be 1 minute. It could be 3 minutes. 5 minutes is probably stretching it. I like to say 2 to 3 minutes is probably roughly on target. Don't go timing yourself, but just get a feel for it. You want to spend enough time on the situation so that people are actually picturing where you were and what the problem was in your head. You want to spend enough time on the task so that they understood what the goal was and how you thought through the steps you needed to take. Okay. The A line is the longest line here because this is really the action that you took. It's the things that you did. It's the hurdles that you had to deal with. This is where they're learning how the rubber meets the road in terms of working with you. Okay. And that is why it's the longest line. The results piece is equally as important, if at all quantifiable, and most results are. Make sure you quantify them. Notice it's as long as the S and the T line. It is not, and then I was done. So one of the most common things we see at Candorful is a very quick results. We want to understand the results. Why? Because we want to know if they were good. and we want to know if they were significant. And that's why you want to quantify them. Sometimes it's worth actually thinking through those projects that you're proud of that you want to talk about and calling a buddy and saying, what were actual results? How many man hours did we save? How many gallons of fuel did we save? What would be okay, we don't know. What would be an estimate? Let's estimate together. You want to have this stuff in your head before you get in an interview. So that is the STAR methodology. It is the thing that will keep you under control as you move through the answer to the questions that you have in front of you. Okay. But definitely write that down. All right, before we actually move on, I want to go back to a question we got about the, excuse me here, about, we had a question about the elevator pitch from Sean. We were told by a rep from Uber that your elevator pitch needs to have specific ask, like a specific job. What do you think? I feel it's a bit forward this early in the game. So the elevator pitch has a lot of different purposes, right? So if you are meeting someone at a networking event, or if you are calling and organizing an informational interview to get to know more about a company, I believe that this is correct, what this person told you. I would like to meet with you, or I'm meeting with you today because I want to learn more about what it's like in a day in the life at Uber, specifically in a role like yours, Mr. Director of Operations, Ms. Director or VP of Finance. You do want a specific ask. If you are in a more of a networking situation at a networking event, you might not have an ask. You're just meeting somebody, so the ask might just be 0% of it, while you just talk about yourself and make sure you're prepared to ask someone as well. Hey, tell me about yourself, right? So I think it depends on the context. Hopefully that answers the question for you, Sean. All right. So moving along from the telling your story to the finishing strong. I know it seems like we're going through this quickly, but I think these are all important pieces of, or major pieces of the interview itself. The finishing strong aspect is really thinking through how to leave your interviewers, leave the company, or leave your people you've networked with a strong impression of you. All right. So unlike the military, questions and engagement are not only encouraged, but they really are required. They're essential. So we want you to have at least 5 or 6 questions prepared. Why 5 or 6? Do I end an interview by having 5 or 6 questions? Maybe, but not necessarily. But if you have 5 or 6, by the time you get to the end of an interview, you may have had 4 of the questions you've got prepared answered just by the conversation you've had. And you'll be stuck in the situation of saying, no, I don't have any questions left. But if you have that many, if you have 5 or 6, you'll have 1 or 2 left to spur on some continued conversation, to be able to show your interest. Even if you don't care anymore and you're just so tired and you want to get out of there, you need to ask some questions. Keep in mind, every time you ask a question, you are taking the microscope off of you for a minute. You can take a breath, you can write a note, you can kind of just get your head squared away. And every time you ask someone a question, believe it or not, you're endearing yourself to them. People love to be asked their opinion. People love to be asked about their experience. It makes them like you, to be able to feel like you want to know their opinion. Don't have 0 questions. Just don't. It is not a good idea. All right. It is okay to ask interviewer about their individual personal experiences with the company. It is okay. I mean, keep in mind, this is their individual experiences with the company. I think being able to just say, hey, I see from your LinkedIn profile that you've been in this organization for 3 years. What would you wish that, what do you know now that you wish you knew then? Or what questions do you wish you asked at the beginning? And get them thinking about what they've had in terms of experience over those 3 years. That is a very good way to get to know them, get to know a little bit about the company. Don't ask the interviewer overly personal information, and don't ask the interviewer anything that can be Google searched, right? So if it's something, if you were to be able to, you wanted to ask about company culture at Facebook, it's probably all over their website. So you shouldn't ask that question. You can ask modified versions, perhaps something like, hey, I've read on the Facebook website that the culture is X, Y, and Z. How would you say that is similar or different from your experience over the past 3 years at Facebook? Or how do you feel that that is similar or different to the particular organization in Facebook that you belong to? So just kind of use the information that you might have Google searched to show you did do a Google search, you did your research, but now I want to know more. All right, be specific, and I gave it away. Be specific in your questions about company culture, and avoid bringing up topics about politics, about the salary during the interview, and about your family. And I will add to this, any concerns about military bias, et cetera, leave it out of the conversation. Don't talk about politics, salary, or family. And in particular for women, I would say avoid family conversations. Once you've gotten an offer, you can talk about your family all day long. It's awesome, but you just don't want to put them in a situation, or maybe they have a follow-on question, and then all of a sudden they can't ask a follow-on question simply because it's illegal to do that. So try to keep away from those topics. And did someone have a question? I didn't know if I was hearing something. You good? All right. Okay. All right. Do convey your knowledge of the company where appropriate. It's really essential to have researched the company in advance and be prepared to use that information to be able to be a part of your interview. And don't ask any questions that make you sound desperate. It is not appropriate to say, did I get the job? Will I get the job? Did I do well? Don't ask that at the end of an interview. You can ask that at the end of a Candorful practice interview, but have more educated questions ready. All right. So follow up and appreciation. So it's also really important at the end of an interview to make sure that you have expressed how important it was to you that people spent their time talking with you. Everybody deserves an email thank you. Everybody. This involves all of the interviewers and the support staff. I know on occasions companies will withhold email addresses from the people that you interviewed with. If that's the case, you can ask your contact, usually a recruiter or an assistant, you can ask them to give you the email address, or you can ask them to forward thank you. So you can send individual emails to that person and ask that they forward each one to the appropriate recipient. It's not as convenient, but it is the right way to get it out there under those circumstances. But definitely everybody deserves a thank you email to everyone on the team. When should you do this? I mean, this is up for discussion. There's no perfect answer. I would say give it a 4 to 24 hour range. Why do I say 4 hours? You need to come off that adrenaline rush that you're on. So you do it carefully and thoughtfully. You need to be able to kind of come off that adrenaline rush so that you have a good memory of what actually happened in the interview. I know when I walk out of interviews, it's kind of all a big blank and it takes a little while to relax. 24 hours might be even better. I wouldn't go over 24 hours because then you start forgetting things and you may totally forget to do it. And that's really not good as well. So 4 to 24 hours is probably the right range for that. And how should you do this? Each one should be personalized. I know it's obvious, but spell check, read out loud with the intention of finding mistakes. So what do I mean by that? I can't tell you the number of documents that I have proofread that I've written, and then I send it to someone else and they find 5 errors that I did not find, OUR instead of ARE or vice versa, THEIR instead of THERE, etc. And I know we're getting very reliant on spell check and grammar check, but it doesn't always work. So if you go through an email and actually read it word by word, not read it, but read it word by word and think about it, you might find things that you wouldn't have found just by reading it fluently. So actually read with the idea that you want to find mistakes in it. Doggone it, there are mistakes there. And also make each of these emails slightly different from each other, right? Don't just send the copy and paste to 6 of the same people. Be creative. Thank you in particular for the conversation about. I really enjoyed hearing your perspective on. So even if you can have the wherewithal during the interview to write a couple of notes about something they said that caught your attention. This will help provide fodder for the emails later. All right. I'm going to take a quick breath, have a sip of water, and we're going to talk next about preparing for the interview. Thank you. All right. So there really are 3 different types of interviews these days. There's phone screens. Usually that's kind of a first interview. There are technology-based interviews, kind of like what we're doing now over Zoom or Teams or Google, and there is certainly face-to-face interviews. So it's really important to think through each step of these so that you can present yourself the best. So if you know you're going to have a phone screen, test your signal. Wherever it is you are going to be, test your signal. And if anybody has a house like mine, test it in the exact corner of the house you're going to be in. I have different levels of Wi-Fi strength throughout my house, and there are places that my call will more likely drop than others. So really take this seriously. You will be surprised, but you will also be happy if you've done this. If you are using Bluetooth devices, and of course your phone as well, make sure they're fully charged, 100% and fully charged. I actually prefer wired in headphones, a good set. I have a set of Bose Sound Sports. They're high quality. They are not Bluetooth because inevitably something happens and the Bluetooth isn't working. We've seen it happen a lot. Doesn't mean you can't use Bluetooth, it's just my preference, but if you use Bluetooth, make sure they're fully charged. If you're using headphones, beware of jewelry, or I don't know, I did it earlier, it was where I was moving my hand here, and you can create a lot of shuffling sounds, so beware of jewelry, etc., so that it's not making noise and the person can't hear you. I prefer using headphones on a call versus talking into my phone. It gives me the ability to take notes. I find it a little bit more relaxing to place my phone down and just be kind of thinking. That is probably a personal preference. Moving along to technology-based interviews. Until you get used to it, this can feel really uncomfortable. So we do Zoom interviews as part of the Candorful practices, and we feel this is very valuable because it's a common way to do interviews now. And for a lot of people, it's uncomfortable, and a lot of people don't even think about, lighting, etc. It's a good way to test all that as well. So it's a great way to get comfortable on Zoom and other technology-based interviews by coming through Candorful. So number 1, look at the web camera. I'm doing it right now. I tend to not do it, and it's the best practices when you're speaking to look into the web camera. So right now that means I'm feeling really awkward because I'm staring at a little light on the top of my computer, and then I'm glancing down to see what I'm going to say next. And it would be similar during an interview. You'd be looking at the light, and then when you're answering, and then you're looking down, like I'm doing right now, to look at the person's face. And so you can read their expressions when they're actually speaking, and then looking up again to answer questions. It may seem like a little thing, but it's not natural, and practicing it is really valuable. Again, test your technology in advance. Don't assume your webcam is working if you haven't used it yesterday. Don't assume your webcam is working if you're on a different software, a different application yesterday. You may need to do a reboot. Log in early, just in case the technology isn't working. You want to be able to potentially do a reboot. Once you've done this a few times, it becomes old hat, and it really is almost the same as doing an in-person interview. One of the most important things to do in a Zoom or otherwise technology-based call is to smile. This is not as natural as you might think, and it is also feels weird, right? Because sometimes, I think, again, slightly different than a typical military situation, your smile is massively important. It is a great way. I apologize for dogs. I'm not in my usual situation. We've got some dogs outside, but they will be quiet in a second. That is actually a good conversation to have. In a real interview, you have to make sure that kids and animals are not around, right? They may sound really annoying, right? But it's a good thing to practice. What will you do with your family and pets during an interview? So anyway, yes, you need to smile to be kind of likable and to create that endearing connection. Desiree pointed out you can join a Zoom test meeting to check your setup and technology, and this is really a great idea. Best practice, record your practice interviews to review later, lighting, and your ums and eye contact. I think in particular, check out your lighting. I do worse in recorded practices than when in person, but it is very good to take note of your ums and practice with Candorful. All right, so that's for doing technology or virtual interview best practices. So what about in person? So in this day and age, it's really important to understand mask protocol. I know the mask mandates have been listed, if I'm correct, in Massachusetts. Don't assume that doesn't mean that people might prefer to have a mask. So there is nothing wrong to reaching out to your recruiter and saying, I am happy to, I'm looking forward to my interview. Just curious on how your team feels about masks. Would you prefer me to wear a mask or not? And I would have a mask with you just in case, okay? Because you might find that they aren't worried about it, but there's one person in their team that is worried about it. It may be for your own health as well. Be sure your mask is worn properly so that you can show a sure sign of respect. I know this is really obvious, but make sure it's up over your nose. Make sure it is over both ears so that you're actually, if you're going to wear it, people see you as being fully respectful. Arrive at your location early. Try not to get there just on time. Nothing wrong with arriving half an hour early, sitting out in the car, kind of taking some deep breaths, and then going in 10 or 15 minutes early and being prepared to wait in the waiting room. It's for me, while both nerve-wracking, at least you know you've done everything you can to be ready. And if they want to escort you in and offer you water a few minutes early, it might be very calming for you. Always have a strong handshake, okay? So no matter whether you are meeting with a man or a woman, have a good strong handshake. I know in some cultures, men will give a light handshake to a woman. That's fine, but I think having a good handshake is really just for everybody is really good. Make that personal connection. And again, smile. I know this might seem obvious, but having this kind of list in your head is really valuable for feeling the confidence and knowing that you're making your very best first impression. It's hard to make another first impression once you've made that initial one. In fact, for being particular, you can't. All right, preparation timeline. So I would say take note on the left and the left chevron 60 plus days out. I firmly believe that you can start this a year out, maybe even a little bit more than a year out. Start your practicing, do your research, start preparing your transition. Doesn't mean if you're already out that any is too late, not at all. But if you're listening in and you're 1 year out, it's fine to start now. Get the 2-hour job search. I mentioned it earlier. You will thank me if you read it cover to cover and follow the process. Come through Candorful. When people ask when the best time is, I believe why not come in at the 1 year out or the 6 month out or the 3 month out point? Because if you decide you want to do it again, you can come through again, right? We give 3 practice interviews, no cost to transitioning military veterans and military spouses. So getting that done while you have brain space and while you're still building your job transition muscles is the best thing you can do. A week or two before an interview, you've got a lot going on in your mind, and it's just a lot harder to kind of change behavior. Still fine to come through that fast, but it's better if you give yourself some time and elbow room. Get on LinkedIn, start your networking, reach out to people. Don't just reach out to people to connect, reach out to people, connect, and send a message about why you're connecting. It doesn't have to be complex, it has to be honest. Great to meet you. I am in the process of, I'm a veteran / transitioning military. I am a military spouse. I am looking for roles in XYZ, and I would love to connect with you and perhaps even have an informational interview. Just give them a reason, have it be honest. Some people will accept, some won't, doesn't matter. That's how you increase your chances of connecting with people, is kind of getting the numbers out there. 10 days out before an interview, rally your supporters, get people involved with you that will help build you up, will help kind of give you the attaboy, attagirl that you need. 1 week out, inspect your wardrobe, confirm your travel if you're moving, test your equipment, moving to a different location for interviews, test your equipment, make sure that it works, assume something will be wrong, make sure your web camera works, make sure your phone works, find a quiet, uncluttered space, no pets, no children. I love kids, I love pets, don't get me wrong. Just during an interview, especially in this day and age where there's a chance they might need you to be remote if there was ever another lockdown, you're actually demonstrating to them that you have a quiet place to be. Now, you may not actually have a quiet place except for that 1 hour you're taking out. We've sent the kids and the dogs out with a sitter. You might only have that hour, but if you show them you don't have that peace and quiet, it actually is a little bit disrespectful, and it may make them concerned, right? It's just another way to kind of nail it. 3 days out, have some positive distractions. You've prepared, you've got your questions, you reviewed your resume, you've thought through the things you want to tell them, you've read the job description, have positive distractions, read a book, listen to Audible, just stay in a calm place. Day before, workout, and definitely pet the dog. Do not do it in your interview suit, but definitely pet the dog or pet the cat and just get focused, relaxed, and confident. I'm a believer in accountability partnerships. So what do I mean by accountability partnerships? Find other people who are looking for a job at the same time. Share ideas and tips. Build each other up. I am not former military, and thank you to all of you who are and your wonderful service. I did stay home with my daughter during her teen years. I thought transitioning back wouldn't be that hard. It actually was very hard. A lot had changed, and I hadn't figured out how to do networking properly. I ended up connecting with someone I had used to work with who was going through something similar, who had been let go of his job on a fairly senior level role, and looking for senior level roles can be a little bit different in their challenge. And he and I started bantering back and forth. And something else, I didn't feel as alone. And he and I were able to give some tips. He got a job first. I felt a little depressed for a while, but he actually kept building me up. And I found a great job that actually, in its own way, was one of the first stepping stones to building Candorful. So I'm very grateful for the things happening as they did. All right, advanced skills. Don't be afraid to put a question in chat if you have a question. And we're a few minutes away from our demonstration with a couple of our coaches. So that's the real fun part. So advanced skills. All right. How do you handle unexpected situations? And they can happen, right? So it's really just take a breath and think. So blindsiding questions. Somebody asks you something about your politics. They shouldn't, but every once in a while it happens. Somebody asks you something that feels like bias. No matter what kind of bias, it feels like that. An uncommon question, but something that's out there is, if we give you an offer right now, will you accept? That's a tough question. Question about your salary. A deep dive into your job search strategy. What are the companies are you interviewing with? How many interviews have you had? How long have you been looking? Things that might make you feel like you're being asked to expose too much and make you feel vulnerable. Or military specific, perhaps inappropriate questions about, do you have PTSD? What are your thoughts on whether we're going into the Ukraine or whatever the latest crisis is? Or if you're a military spouse, questions about your gaps in your resume. So all of these things and more could happen. Unlikely they will. Unlikely they will. But the more interviews you do, the more likely somebody says something that isn't really comfortable. First thing I want you to do, very first thing I want you to do, is to assume they didn't mean it the way it sounded. May or may not be true, but start from a place of generosity. I have a situation I was in when I was interviewing somebody. Luckily, it was a 2-on-1 interview. I was with another colleague. I was working at Cornell University, which is located in the beautiful area of Ithaca and the Finger Lakes. There's a lot of lovely wineries that my husband and I used to like to go visit on the weekends. We were in the sell mode. This guy was a great guy. We wanted to get him to accept before we even were done interviewing with him. And I wanted to talk about wonderful things in the area. And I wanted to bring up the wineries. And I led with the most stupid comment. I said, do you drink? That's a very inappropriate thing to say. And it is not what I meant. It's not what I meant. I very quickly backpedaled. My colleague looked at me like, oh my God, Pat, what did you just say? I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Let me tell you about the wineries and the waterfalls and the Finger Lakes, because there's a lot of fun to be had. So assume somebody was as stupid as I was in that moment. Start with that. Doesn't mean that they even realized they were stupid. And I apologize for using the word stupid, but people make mistakes, right? So take a breath, let them think about what they said, not deliberately, not a pregnant pause, but just like take a breath and answer slowly. And your role is to not react, right? Think about what you can say, right? So remember, a lot of these things aren't necessarily going to happen, but if somebody says something and it feels like a bias or it feels wrong, just do your best to answer a side answer to a question, right? If it's something that's military specific, you can say something positive, like, my 6 years in the military were very, very rewarding. I got to see a lot of the world, or got to see a lot of different cultures, which only prepares me to deal with the cross-cultural diversity within the workplace these days, it's been an experience that we just would never give up, or something like that. Just stay calm. And if the person wasn't coming from a generous place, that's their problem, right? So stay calm and do your best to answer from a place of generosity. So we have a question in chat about dress code. We will talk about that. It's a really good question. So I will do that after the slide. Also, keep in mind that there are distractions. Fire alarms go off. People are looking at their phone and they're texting while you're answering your question. It feels disrespectful. But keep in mind, you also don't know what's going on their side. They might have a production floor failure going on. They might have a family situation, a crisis at home. Approach it from a place of generosity. Do not get annoyed. Do not get mad. Perhaps they are just being, disrespectful, but assume that they're not and carry on. Do your best to answer and ignore the fact that they are on their phone while they do it. Hopefully that's helpful in a way to think about it. The key is to not react and to have a solid response. So let's go to the question about dress. I think that's a really good question. So it really depends. Okay. I know, for example, our wonderful sponsor, Amazon, one of the great organizations we work with at Candorful. We have about 20 coaches out of our 100 who are actively conducting interviews, and they're Amazon employees. They tell me very frequently that that the best thing to do is to wear business casual. So this addresses your question that you're asking here. So business casual can be defined in a lot of ways, but you definitely want to look good no matter who you're interviewing for. Whether it's a tech startup where they're telling you a t-shirt is fine, it really isn't. So you should look like in a pressed shirt, plaid shirt with a collar, or a nice polo shirt if you're a guy. You want to look nice. You want to feel nice. For these kinds of companies, business casual, it would not be a jacket and tie or a fancy blouse and jacket, but it would be nice blouse or nice shirt, open collar shirt, etc. If it's a typical corporate role, finance, consulting, you want to be in a suit and tie or a suit and blouse. There is, I have heard from Amazon folks, not all of them, that if someone wears a suit and tie, it might show that you haven't researched the culture of the company and haven't done your pre-work. So that's something to think about. I believe we actually have someone from Amazon named Alyssa on the call, and Alyssa, feel free to put something in chat if you think I didn't nail that properly. And again, I think that the answers for Amazon refer to tech culture as well, but not always. It is always acceptable to reach out to whoever your connection is at the company and ask them, what do people typically wear in an interview? And if they say business casual and you don't feel comfortable with that, A, Google it, B, respond. Oh, would you call business casual being dress pants / khakis and an open collared shirt, or would you with a skirt and blouse be fitting? Don't be afraid. Don't obsess on it, but don't be afraid to banter a little bit about it. All right. We frequently get asked questions about senior level interviews. And so let's call this advanced skills. On occasion, we'll have more senior level people, 25, 30 years, ask us, okay, this is great. I understand about behavioral interviewing, et cetera, but I am going to be doing senior level interviews and that differs. Yes and no, right? So it isn't really that interviews differ. You still have to be able to do your elevator pitch. You still have to be able to answer interview questions, whether it's conversational off your resume or whether it is transactional questions like we talked about before, and need to stay on tack. So that means you still using that STAR format in your head and kind of making sure you've covered all those bases. It might be a little bit more relaxed in a more Q&A resume setting, but it's still trying to make sure you tell them what the problem was, what the action was, and what you delivered and what that result was. So interviews are like fingerprints. They're never the same. There's infinite possibilities. It's impossible to predict, which is why we have you do in Candorful, why we have you do 3 practice interviews with 3 different people or more, so that you kind of get the feeling of, oh my gosh, I have to think on my feet, but I also have to kind of have my toolbox all set so I know how to do it. So keep these thoughts in mind. Research and understand the audience. This is your opportunity to really use LinkedIn, right? So who are your interviewers? What level are they? And what do I know about them? No matter how senior you are, your interviewers are likely to be from all levels of the company. I don't care if you're going after a COO job. You may be escorted in by somebody who is just hired in from college, and that person may ask you something from your resume. They may actually be asked by the hiring team to give input. So consider you may be interviewed by people from 20 to whatever years old, from entry level all the way to a CEO. So it's not so much senior level, it's really what you bring to the table, and the bar is higher, right? So you'll need to express the impact you made from more the senior level perspective. It isn't really that the questions are different. They can be the same and they can be different. The bar is higher for you. All right. So with that, we're getting to the most fun part of the day. Let's do a time check. So it's 1:52, perfect. So we have 3 wonderful audience volunteers, and we have 3 wonderful Candorful coaches. And what's going to happen here is each coach is one at a time going to ask one of the volunteers a question, and they will the volunteer will give their answer. The coach will then give them feedback, kind of like a mini version of what we do at Candorful. And also I may give a little bit of feedback as well. And in addition, then we'll move on to the second and to the third coach. So with that, do we have Alan White on?
I don't believe Alan has joined.
Okay.
And just for planning, 2 of our volunteers don't appear to be here or are having technical issues. So Gina Treitz will be paired with Alan when Alan joins. I could be paired with Edward, and Justin Souza just joined us, and he can be paired with Bob.
Okay. All right. So why don't we move? Ed, are you on?
He's here, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So Ed, all right, Ed, and I will tell you, we have these awesome volunteers from the Office of Economic Empowerment who are stepping in, and they didn't actually get quite the same coaching by me yesterday. So I give you guys a lot of credit for helping out with this. So, so Ed, why don't we start by you just giving like your very short elevator pitch about you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Pat, for putting all this together and for the economic empowerment team. My name is Edward Avila. I go by Ed. I'm currently a program manager for the new employee success team for all AWS onboarding. We're trying to make the onboarding experience better for all of our new hires. It's really my passion. I did some tech stuff at AWS. I've been here for 4 years. While I did some of the tech side things, I decided I wanted to go back to the success of people and employee success. And so with one of our new leadership principles, a strive to be Earth's best employer, that's what my focus is for this year. I helped with Candorful because I know how difficult it was finding a position, getting out of the military. And so this is my way of giving back. So I truly appreciate and love this organization for that.
Okay, that's awesome. Ed is actually a fairly new Candorful coach. You've been with us for a couple of months and doing great things already. Very pleased to have you, and please, Ed, pass the word amongst your team members about how grateful we are for Amazon's support. And so, Jack, did we say we're pairing you with Ed?
That's right. Yep.
All right, Ed, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. Jack, we don't always make the right decision all the time. We're human. So can you please tell me about a time when you made a bad decision? What was the impact of that decision? What did you learn? And how have you applied what you learned?
Sure, absolutely. I think when I was working at a former internship at a city level, I was in charge of some of our marketing and communication efforts. So for example, I was in charge of a biweekly newsletter that would go out every other week. And this would be about particular arts and culture organizations throughout the region that would have events, and we would publish those to the newsletter to publish those to people who were interested in arts and culture events throughout that region. And I think a mistake I made and a bad decision I made at that time was I did a newsletter, and I was a few months in at this point, and I was kind of in a groove, and I was going along and publishing events. And I didn't include one event because I had assumed it didn't really have a broad reach to a lot of people in the region. Turns out the organization reached out to us and were upset that we didn't include that event in our newsletter, and that was of course my fault. So I think what I learned from that was to not assume that certain events for that particular organization didn't have a broad appeal, and to be a little bit more holistic in our approach with that newsletter. So making sure organizations were well represented, and understanding that a lot of organizations did sort of need that exposure that we offered. So making sure each organization had equal representation in terms of what events we're promoting, and also not assuming that one particular event might not have that broad appeal. So basically, I was just making sure that I was representing organizations a lot better than I was previously. And I think going forward, we were a little bit more broad with our promotion, and making sure that the organizations we were showcasing did have representation in each newsletter.
Awesome, Jack. Thank you so much for that answer. As far as for feedback for that answer that you gave, it was perfectly formatted in the STAR method. You were able to give me the situation task and put me there as if I was there working alongside with you. You were also able to give me the action as far as what you did. I know from the military side of things, we normally want to talk about we and team and us, and that's really all fine and great, but we really want to hear in these interview sessions what you've done, what you've spearheaded, and what you've accomplished, or in this case, what you didn't accomplish. And that kind of leads me to the next point, is that I would like, you did very well in being able to come up with an example fairly quickly of a bad decision that you've made. Normally, we go into these interviews and we are full of all of our examples of where we've done great, because we want to wow these interviewers and the employers. But a lot of time we don't take the time to peel back our layers and become vulnerable and go, where have I made mistakes? Where are my weaknesses or setbacks where I need to improve my skills? And so thank you very much for sharing the time when you were human, made a mistake, made a bad decision, and how you've learned from that and applied it in the future by giving us the results of how you did this. As far as for the results section, in this particular situation, it wasn't that you can actually give necessarily a data-driven result, but please, everyone, keep in mind that data, like Pat had said, data-driven results are going to be far better than saying, we did well going into the future. What is well? How do you measure that success? If you can give that data-driven decision or impact and result, for the result part of the answer, you can really finalize the answer to your question in your example, and it comes off really strong on how you what you accomplished or what you learned.
Excellent. Jack, I think you really knocked it out of the park. I don't have anything to add to Ed's point. Really nicely structured, well done. What's interesting about this question, I believe it's a very important question, because you have to be able to show humility, right? We talked about not worrying about being arrogant in the beginning, and that is important. And I don't want people to worry about it that as much as military folks typically do. But you also need to be able to show that you are in touch with the fact that you are human and you make mistakes, and that you are willing to learn from that. And so being able to come up with that experience is important, because we usually try to kind of protect those experiences and not share them with the world. So having one that is comfortable to do that with is really important. So thank you so much, Jack. It was great. Ed, awesome. It's the first time Ed participated in a workshop with us. So thank you so much, Ed. Appreciate you doing that. And so I know that Alan is in the process of joining, but we'll give him a little bit more buffer in time. So we'll move on to Bob Stern. Bob, you want to, Jack can let you up, and then you could do your 30-second Bob pitch.
Will do. Thank you, Pat. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, my name is Bob Stern. I'm a lawyer. I'm retired. After working in a law firm, I spent most of my career in-house for large companies, was a general counsel for a large multinational corporation for many, many years. And these days I'm on several nonprofit boards and do some volunteering, my favorite of which is for Candorful, which I've really enjoyed. And so I'm glad to be here.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And so we are pairing with is Gerald on, Jack?
We're actually pairing with Justin, who is here with us.
I'm sorry, with Justin?
Justin.
Justin is here with us. Okay. Well, that's right. Excellent. So Justin, will you give us your short pitch?
Yeah, hi. I'm Justin Souza, a veteran, 7 years National Guard, 1 year active duty, deployment to Afghanistan as a combat medic. I am currently a VSO, or a Veteran Service Officer, for the town of Grafton, Massachusetts, and several other towns nearby. I've been doing it for about 5 years since I got out of the military. And I look forward to working with you guys today.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Justin. I appreciate that. So Bob, go for it.
Okay, Justin, it's nice to meet you. And thanks so much for being an active participant today. So here's my question. We pride ourselves here on having a strong culture around inclusion and diversity. How do you think that may impact the performance of your job?
I don't think that that will impact my job. That may impact my job in the way that I would be exposed to more knowledge, more diverse backgrounds, different points of view on different ways of looking at different situations. I can pull from my military experience, where we had people from many different backgrounds coming to be part of one unit. And in order to make that unit act in concert together, we had to kind of bring everyone together. Everyone's green in the Army. There was no, I'd say it was colorblind, but we don't ignore everyone's background. We use that, especially in the National Guard. You have people coming from their civilian lives into the unit. They may be firefighters, they may be, clerks in their job, and you can draw on those individual experiences to help in different situations. If you can think of, the HR person for the unit really needs some help. Well, these two people are HR people in their other jobs. Bring them over, even if they might be mechanics in the unit. So I think to answer your question, how do you think that the strong culture of inclusion and diversity may impact my job in a very positive way, because we'll be able to pull from people's experiences, cultures, and backgrounds to help build a better team in our job here. And pending any questions, that's my final answer.
Okay, that's great, Justin. Thank you very much. So a couple comments on this question, and then I'll get to some of your specific parts of your answer. This is a harder question to ask than many other questions, partly because it's not a question that lends itself to the STAR technique. It's not a tell me about a time type question. It's more open-ended. And I think the second thing, because I ask this question a lot in my interviews, and I notice people, especially if it's their first practice interview, have a little bit of trouble with this question. And I think it's partly because it's a potentially sensitive topic. Nobody wants to say something that is going to be offensive. Nobody wants to say something that's going to be perceived as the wrong thing. And also because people aren't that used to talking about this topic in a formal kind of setting like a job interview, which is one of the reasons I like to ask the question, so people have practice talking about this. And so a couple thoughts. One, at the very beginning, you started one direction and then paused and went another. I think it was good to change direction. And I would say, especially when you get a question that is not one that you've studied for, it's not one you've read online, tell me about a time you failed, and you have a canned answer for that, not canned, but you have a thought about how to answer that question. When you get a question like this that might throw you for a loop, it's fine to take some time. I know if you're quiet and don't start answering for a few seconds, there's a pressure that builds to start talking, but that's okay. Take your time, compose your thoughts, and then jump into your answer. So don't feel too rushed to start speaking immediately. Pause, collect your thoughts, and then jump into the answer. Your answer got better and better as it went on. And I liked your finish. I liked your finish where you said it was going to be very positive. I also think it's absolutely correct to do what you did and pull in your military experience. Military does a terrific job around these issues and is often a leader, and is a situation where you're working with a lot of people from diverse, organizations, diverse backgrounds, et cetera. So you should definitely pull from that. So the only advice I'd give is, look for questions that are not the star type questions. Things like, what's your proudest achievement? What's your greatest strength? What's your greatest weakness? Those are more open-ended, don't call for a star structure. And so you have to take a little bit of time to compose your thoughts at the beginning. And I think there's a million different ways to answer that particular question in a really good way. There's no one right way. There's a lot of good ways to answer your question. But from a hiring manager, you just want to make sure that, let's say, assume the hiring manager has a diverse team, because part of the question, I'm signaling to you what my organization's values are. I'm saying we pride ourselves on having a strong culture around diversity and inclusion. So listen to that, take that as a cue that this is a value for this organization, and go with it. And say, talk about how being part of a team, you have to respect everybody and value everybody. And that something as simple as that goes a long way to convincing somebody that you get it, that you're going to be fine. Thanks.
Well done, guys. I think that's a very hard question. In fact, I will even let on that when Bob, we did the same presentation for Followup a few weeks ago, and when Bob and I discussed what question he was going to ask, I thought to myself, I'm not sure if I feel confident answering it myself. So I'm questioning it. And Bob actually brought up the fact that this is becoming a very common question. I shouldn't say very common, but a more common question, and being prepared for it is essential. And the reality is there is a simple answer, which he's described. And I want to compliment you, Justin. You started on a path that made you uncomfortable and you stopped. And I know that Bob already said this, but I think this is something good for people to take note of, right? If you start down that path where your mouth goes a little bit sooner than your brain, it's fine. Stop, take a breath, right? That can happen with an easy question even. I tend to talk too fast. Sometimes I start to stumble, and I've had to learn to sometimes just pull back and say, okay, that was fun. Let me start my sentence again. It is okay to be human during an interview. It really is. And if anything, as long as it's within reason, it makes you more three-dimensional, makes you more human, makes you more likable. So how you handled it, Justin, by taking a pause was a good thing to show off. So I appreciate that. I know our third coach, Alan, who's an awesome guy from California, is having technical trouble. He's been texting me for the last 5 minutes. He can't get on the Zoom. So unfortunately, you have to listen to me ask the question. I believe we're asking Gina. Is that right, Jack?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. So you already know me, but I'll do the quick elevator pitch to kind of make myself suffer along with the rest of you. My name is Pat Hovell. I'm co-founder and executive director of Candorful. I have a bachelor's degree in engineering and MBA from MIT. And I have a career in management consulting, engineering, and career advising at Cornell, which all those pieces combined led me to the passion to both work with the military and to create Candorful with my wonderful co-founder, Pete Sukitz. And that takes me to today. And with that, Gina, can you tell us something about yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Gina Treitz. I was in the Air Force for 4 years, from 2016 to 2020. My career field was human resource management. And then currently I am a veterans bonus coordinator under the Treasury. And yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Gina, appreciate you interviewing today. Can you tell me your greatest weakness?
Yes. So when I think of my greatest weakness, I think of how I am an overthinker and I overanalyze situations. And to me, that is also helpful because it helps me learn and it helps me be engaged in situations. It makes me think more of like a problem solver rather than hinders me. It makes me think a little bit more about situations and how to solve problems. Thank you.
Great, that's great. This is actually a very common but very hard question, which is why we have it in there. I will tell you, it's one of the least favorites of our coaches to ask, probably because they know it's hard, and also because they know it's fairly common. But it's important, like Bob's question, it's important to be prepared for these less than comfortable questions. I would even argue that there are very few interview questions that are truly comfortable. But the way to deal with a weakness question is very much like what Gina did. And I will start by holding up, I love doing little demos. It's a question mark on this. I don't know if you can see that. Think about the shape of, not a question mark, a check mark. Think about the shape of a check mark. And Gina did that. So she started down the short end of the check mark by saying a negative thing about herself. She's a bit of an overthinker. By the way, Gina, I am too. Welcome to my world. And kind of it took an agreement with herself that this was a problem. And then she started up the positive side of the question mark. I don't know if my thing shows. Starts going up the positive, why there's benefits, why there's good things about it. It's also helpful because, and that's exactly how you want to handle it. I would add a little bit more embracing why it's negative, because you want to say, here's the negative thing, and here's why it's negative, as opposed to here's a negative thing, but it's actually helpful. It's a little bit like, I'm an overthinker, but I think it's good, where the reality is being an overthinker, from my perspective, means there are times you get stuck, or if you don't get stuck, you're spending a little bit too much time on stuff, which can be a problem, right? That can truly be a problem in the workplace. So you want to tell your interviewer that you understand that this is a problem, right? So without overemphasizing it. So I'm a bit of an overthinker at times. I recognize that if I'm not careful, this can make me perhaps drill down a little deep to gain my confidence, and before I start finishing a solution of a problem. So, or something to that effect, and then start up the other side. So one of the things I've done is I've learned to step back and make a list. I don't know what it might be, but so I make a list of the various things that I'm concerned about, and to kind of go through and pick the most important topics of that, tackle them, and move along, whatever it might be. And then the things you said, it's also helpful because, and the reality is, Gina, it is also good, right? An overthinker is going to think ahead to problems that could happen. An overthinker is going to probably create a situation. Jack and I were just talking about this before we started the workshop, right? We both like to be very thorough and like to kind of dot all the I's and cross all the T's, so we enjoy working with each other. That's an overthinker. Sorry to blame you for being an overthinker, Jack, but that is a way to avoid uncertainty. Of course, uncertainty is going to happen too, so you need to acknowledge that to the interviewer. So you need to both go down the negative, but then come up with a positive of the good things you're going to do. So Gina, I think you did pretty well. Just embrace it a little more, embrace the negativity of it a little bit more, and then continue up that positive side of things. So there's 3 examples. If anybody wants to throw a question quickly into the chat about any of this before we close, I am happy to try to grab those questions and ask them. We're almost done, and we're a little bit ahead of schedule, so we have a little bit of time if you want. But in the meantime, we'll continue through our deck. So basically, we're pretty much doing a thank you here, because such a great team. Thank you so much to the Massachusetts Office of Economic Empowerment, Veterans Bonus Division. It was great working with you, Jack and Steve, and Gina, great to meet you as well. You guys have been great. Thank you for letting us do this with you. I want to thank Amazon again for their wonderful support. Amazon tells me that they are hiring in the Boston area. So, Jack, has Alyssa potentially joined the event at this point?
I haven't seen Alyssa join. I'm going to keep an eye out,
Okay.
But I haven't seen her yet.
All right. Alyssa is an awesome military affairs program manager at the global DEI team at Amazon. There is an email address up in front of you here, militaryaffairs@amazon.com. If you are interested in employment in the Boston and Massachusetts area, and for Amazon, you can reach out to their team through the militaryaffairs@amazon.com email address that you're seeing on the kind of the upper right above the circle that has the Amazon logo in it. I believe there's a little bit of a questionnaire you have to answer, but that's how you can connect with them. Alyssa is great, and it's been a great opportunity working with her on kind of making sure we delivered a good program to you. I also want to kind of walk through a couple of other things. If you're interested in practicing with Candorful, there, I know I've been talking about it as if it's a commercial. Remember, we're a nonprofit. We do this free to for military job candidates. So just come practice with us. We want to make this whole transition, or even a career transition for a veteran that's been out working for a few years. We want to make this easier for you. So practice with us. We want you to schedule an initial diagnostic meeting. Bob Stern is one of our intake coaches, so you might find him on that list. Ed is one of our interview coaches, so we encourage an intake diagnostic meeting, and then we encourage at least 3 practice interviews with 3 different coaches. Go to candorful.org, find the Get Started tab at the top, choose Military Connected Community. Schedule this well before your upcoming interviews. The more time you have in advance, the more kind of brain space you have for making change. We would love it if you would do a survey, to fill out a couple of minute survey, tell us what you thought of this, whether you're watching this through Facebook or a follow-on streaming or the live audience. Just, you can hold your phone up to that QR code way to the right of the number 2, and you can be taken to that survey. If you want to learn more about Candorful, go to our blog at candorful.org/candorfeed/ for tips and tricks. And there's our email address as well. If you're trying to log in to schedule an interview, it's actually better to go through candorful.org than email us. But if you email us, we'll help you get there as well. And of course, my board would not be happy with me if I didn't say there, yes, we accept donations. This is how we fund all this great work. So that second QR code at the bottom, hold your phone up to that and you can make a donation to Candorful. We always appreciate that. Every bit of help we get helps us help more. We've provided over 2,000 we've supported over 2,000 military at this point, with well over 3,000 sessions. I think it's actually closer to 5,000. And we have grown from a handful of coaches to over 100 at this point. And we're helping well over 1,000 military job candidates every year. So we want to continue to grow so we can help more. If you're a corporate partner interested in supporting like Amazon has, please contact us as well. Major thank you to you all. And I will hang out for a little while if people have questions and want to throw them into the chat. Happy to hang out here and do my best to answer them. Again, the 2-Hour Job Search is a great book. Candorful.org is how you'd connect with us. And thank you so much to the Office of Economic Empowerment, Amazon, and the Cummings Foundation.
Great. Thank you so much, Pat. And I'd like to thank Bob and Edward for providing some great feedback to today's questions, as well as Gina and Justin for answering the questions. And to everyone in the chat, thank you very much for joining us. Seeing as we have no questions in the chat, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us and wish you all a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.